I think this really started in the 90s. We started seeing, oh, you're depressed? Let me put you on an antidepressant. They never talked about exercise. They never talked about nutrition. They never, of course, then they know about gut microbiome, but we know now, but those conversations weren't happening.
Here's a question for you. Do you believe you are what you eat? Well, let me tell you what. After you listen to health and wellness expert Judy Gaman, you will. And this is all about regenerating your system, longevity, brain health, and food as medicine. A big belief for me. Get set. It's a great podcast. Well, hi, everybody. This is Diane Gilman, formerly known as Queen of Jeans on QVC-HSM, but now the proud host of Too Young to Be Old. And we love to delve into every solution for aging more successfully, purposely, and gracefully. And today, we've got the right guest to do that. Judy Gaman. She is all about longevity, health, and wellness aspects. And Judy, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to dive into my favorite subject and one that I think the audience is constantly fascinated by: food as medicine. How does nutrition impact our hormones, our mood, and our longevity? Go
It's
for
such a
it.
great topic.
Yeah,
It's such a great
it
topic.
is.
And I love being on with you. This is something that I think we kind of got away from, really recognizing that what we put into our bodies is what makes our bodies.
Yeah.
And food became about convenience instead of quality.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is a conversation we need to be having for sure.
Well, let's go for it. Now, I want to understand your power connection between nutrition and the body's chemistry. You know, the other day, I never, ever, ever eat French fries. I'm so careful. Never eat French fries. I'm about to turn 80 in a couple of months, and it's a real demarcation point and a huge decade birthday. And somebody kept saying, have you been to the fish market by you? You can go in, choose your fish, they cook it for you. So it was calamari, and I had it fried. And I don't think I've done anything that naughty where it's fried fish, heavily fried, sitting on a bed of heavily fried French fries, and I'm still living down the guilt. So tell me the connection between body chemistry and nutrition and aging successfully.
Well, one of the things that we know is that all disease really is linked to inflammation. And this is something we didn't fully understand in the past. I mean, we could talk about cancer, we can talk heart disease, diabetes, all of them. They all are linked to inflammation. And what is the biggest inflammatory? It's the food that we eat. What's the biggest anti inflammatory? It's the food that we eat. So if you can kind of understand that and then say, okay, then what I put in my mouth is going to make it one way or the other a big difference. And I always love to say, you can, like your French fries example, you can have this cheat day, but really pay attention to what happens when you do that. Because if you really are paying attention, you can actually train your brain to not like these things.
You
Because
know,
then yeah.
I'm going to just, for once, interrupt you, promise, only time. I was really let down by the flavor. And it was because I'm used to using the finest olive oil or avocado oil, something that is carefully orchestrated to my body. This was obviously a very heavy vegetable oil. They fried it in. I was so let down. I was ready to have a cheat day that I loved, but my taste buds are more attuned to probably more elevated vehicles of getting to the cooked part of this. And you're right. I've trained myself to not enjoy food that isn't calibrated to a higher level.
It's a big step, but once you can make that connection, and as we eat, if we think about how do we feel, and even how do we feel when we eat healthy. And I always say, if you write this down, if you journal how you felt that day, and if you didn't feel good, maybe journal like what you ate, because what you're doing is you're providing a roadmap for yourself. I think one of the biggest problems then is the use of artificial sweeteners, and they're in so many things, unfortunately. I think we're going to get away from this, and I would be so happy to see that. But if we look at, it's in our medicines, it's in children's medicine, it's in our toothpaste, it's in all the things that you buy that have a barcode. All the time you're seeing these ingredients, and maybe you don't even know what they are, but they directly affect the gut biome. The microbiome of the gut is so important to the brain and so important to overall body health. But we didn't know that there was this big gut brain connection until about 10 years ago. We were talking about it early on because we were really in tune to a lot of what was going on in the research, but it wasn't really mainstream. Now you hear more about this gut brain connection. We're seeing that people that can get their gut healthy, even if they've had diseases like MS or Parkinson's, you hear a lot of people talk about fibromyalgia. I personally think that fibromyalgia is just what I call a trash can diagnosis. What that means in medicine is there's a root cause, but it just hasn't been identified. So it's more of a symptomatic label rather than what was the root cause of this? Where is this all this inflammation stemming from? Again, pay attention to what we're eating and read those
Oh,
ingredients.
yeah. Now, do you believe in the theory of using food as medicine? In other words, let's say you're going through menopause. You're just feeling miserable in 1,000 ways. What would be your paradigm shift in diet that would actually aid lessening the all the things about menopause that we don't love? So you want better sleep, you want less hot flashes, you want healthier hair and skin. And somebody said to me, and it was about turning 80, you don't need to act your age, but you need to eat your age. Do you believe that?
That's a great, great, great thing. A great statement. I might steal that and use that myself. It's so important. Talking about your body and how it reacts to what you eat, and even how it affects your hormone releases. There are some things that really are shocking that we know now. So you called it a theory, but I think we now have enough science behind it that we do know that how much of what we eat affects the outcome of our hormones and our balances within our life, our neurological expressions, all of these things. We've seen this time and time again. You know, they looked into the blue zones, but this is places around the world where people live past 100, but they don't just live past 100, they do it really well. They found that they eat, most of them eat something that's similar to like a Mediterranean diet. They have a lot of vegetables. You mentioned olive oil, avocado oil, a lot of things like blueberries. We always say you should be tasting the rainbow or eating the rainbow. That the food needs to have color and not from dyes. The more we can get these fruits and these vegetables in us, and the fish, you know, the omega-3s are really good, that we can get out of like cold water fish. And the more we can avoid things like anything processed. In menopause, there's a reaction that some people may or may not have picked up on, and that is when it's called the meat sweats. So you may have had steak like your whole life. You may just be a meat and potato kind of person. But as we age and our body breaks things down differently, if you eat a large steak, you may find that those hot flashes are way worse, or you can't sleep at night. We see a lot of insomniacs that come back and they're like, you look, I've tried everything. Well, let's talk about what are you eating and when are you eating? It's about what you're eating. It's about when you're eating. It's about, are we drinking enough fluid? Are we having enough water? Because a lot of people, when we explain to them, hey, your brain doesn't know the difference between hunger and thirst. So reach for a glass of water first, you know, carry a water bottle, whatever it is that's going to make sure you hydrate. And if you can hydrate first, that's front line of defense. And then, okay, I'm still hungry. Then move into eating.
Ah,
Instead
okay.
of chips, if you're craving chips, you're probably craving something with flavor and something that is crunchy. This is where we say make sure that you have some raw vegetables, because that will fuel
Oh,
that need for crunch. And if
that's
you
fascinating.
yeah, and if you
Yeah.
constantly have this crave for crunch, you probably should get your iron levels tested. A lot of people that eat ice actually do that because they're anemic and their iron levels are down.
You know, I got a terrible case of acid reflux, and I would eat 3 meals a day, which I didn't need, and gained a lot of weight. And I would eat dinner at maybe 9 o'clock at night. And I found, and I wonder if you agree, that there are a lot of conditions and roads to better health through diet that you can be in charge of if you are just aware. I took away dinner. I made lunch by 2 p.m. My major meal of the day, didn't have to take Prilosec anymore, and which they found are those drugs for acid reflux are not good for you.
No,
Um,
they'll kill your kidneys.
yeah, took that medication away, substituted it with a change of attitude towards when the big meal of the day should be, and it worked. So, what is your belief, honestly, about the best or the worst foods to balance hormones and hormonal changes going through menopause?
Well, I think you really got to focus on the value of the food. When I say the value of the food, is like how much nutritional value is in this. Some people say, "Oh, I want to eat," and they'll, come up with something they want to eat. Yeah, maybe this is high in protein, but maybe this doesn't have anything else. Doesn't have your B vitamins and C and zinc and all these other things. So I think it's really important that as we age, we tend to really have more micronutrient deficiencies within the cell.
What is
Maybe the
that?
cells that means that when we look inside the cell, that it maybe in your blood serum levels, your B's are high or your C's okay. You're at these levels that look pretty good, but your body's not utilizing it as well. So when we see these micronutrient deficiencies inside the cell, it means that you need a little bit more of the circulating vitamins and minerals so that your body can utilize it a little better. And you need to be careful what you're pairing it with so that it's absorbed. When you eat, what you eat, so important. And if you can make sure that at least like your lunch is as heavily back to the color. Are you eating things that are red? Are you eating things that are green? Are you eating blueberries? We know that this meal is very important to pack full of those vitamins.
Does almost raw red meat qualify as red? What is your attitude towards? I get two different points of view constantly, which is either, oh no, I'm swearing off of all red meat forever in my entire life, or I'm always getting lectured, Diane, you need more protein. You need red meat more often. And I swear to you, it's like a ping pong match. What is your attitude towards red meat? And how many times a week would you introduce it? And do you feel that we're better off as women having gone through or still in some stage of menopause? How beneficial is red meat? Is that a prime protein? Because I'm always hearing you don't eat enough protein. And frankly, I'm not a big lover of beans. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm fair with eating rainbow
Yeah.
vegetables. I'm not great at it. Hi, today we're talking about Particlar. This is a series of supplements, and let me tell you what, if you are aging with any sort of inflammation that becomes one of the biggest issues in your everyday life, and swelling and joint pain, oh, I'm on it 100%. I begun a new vitamin regime from Particlar that has literally changed my life, and I feel so much better on a daily basis. Try it out with a discount using our code below. You are going to love it.
Well, I got to tell you that over time, my answer really to this has changed. And I think
Ah,
I think that this is because we've become more aware. We become way more aware about the individual rather than these blanket rules for all of the population. And some of that has to do with, at executive medicine of testing, executive medicine of Texas, we do a lot of testing and we do a lot of personalized testing. And so we're able to kind of see what individuals need, and based on them and based on their genetics and based on very personalized things about them and about their own code. So for me, I grew up very much a red meat eater.
Of
I
course.
pretty
Yeah.
much had red meat every day, and it maybe sometimes in 2 meals during the day. And I always said, gosh, I gotta have protein. I feel really good when I have red meat. Now, as I've aged, I feel a little differently about how much red meat I can take in. I do not agree with the people that say everybody should go off red meat across the board. It shouldn't be a thing. Nobody should be eating it. I don't believe that. And I don't agree with the people that say everybody should have red meat and they should be eating this much. It's changed because of what I've seen, and what I've seen where people can take this information about themselves and they can then go into their own meal plan and adopt different things, changing from, okay, I'm going to have red meat sparingly, meaning like twice, two or three times a week, I'm going to have red meat. But the other times I'm going to have the lean white meats. And really it's amazing to see what changes them, their inflammatory markers. I'll give you an example about red meat that
Right.
maybe some of your listeners don't know. And this is a game changer for a lot of our people that have gout or they have some kind of inflammatory disease and they're like, oh, my uric acid level is so high, I just can't have red meat. Well, you can have lamb, because lamb out of the red meats doesn't raise uric acid levels like beef does and buffalo and all these others. Knowing that and having those conversations with your practitioner of, okay, I like red meat. All right, let's find out how we can put it in your diet in a way that's going to keep you healthy. Now, I also, when we talk about different people reacting to different things, it's the same thing when we look at carbohydrate loads. There are some people that can do, this is really popular, the refrigerator oatmeal, where they put the oats in and they put in a variety of things. They put it in the refrigerator overnight and then they eat the next day. For some people, that is absolutely a go-to fabulous thing for them. But for others, they can get a massive crash because of the way that their body handles that carbohydrate load. So again, it gets back to personalized medicine in the sense of what's best for each individual.
I think that's what you have to do because, I'm in Manhattan. They've got a whole new thing here, but they may have it in where you are, Dallas as well, called concierge medicine.
Yeah,
So
that's what we
you,
do. Yep.
yeah, so you pay
Yep.
just to have a different cell phone number from the doctor in case you have an emergency. But for me to sit down and have the conversation you're talking about,
Yeah.
impossible.
Oh,
All
well,
my GP wants to tell me about is your cholesterol is high, I'm putting you on. You're 10 pounds overweight, you're getting Ozempic. They're all major drugs.
yeah.
And I'm supposed to believe that that's going to lead to a better life rather than trying to correct the situation organically. If I wanted to ask my GP about anti aging or regenerative medicine, I wouldn't be going to my GP. I would have to find specialized, probably care that has no basis with insurance. And
Yeah.
that leaves you in a very rarefied situation where you are able to afford to age correctly. And I can't tell you the number of people I know, Judy, who are well moneyed, well educated. And when you start to talk to them about food, like hyper processed, super processed food, they
Yeah.
get angry. They think this is just a bunch of baloney, even from a young age. I think I had a McDonald's once. I liked the French fries, but the rest of it, I thought, really? People are nuts about this? It tastes like cardboard. Now, at my age, turning 80, my focus needs to be regenerative nutrition
Yeah.
and
100%.
and honestly, nutrition that encourages longevity. That is what I'm striving for. If I have carbs, I'll have them at the beginning of the day so they can
Burn
dissipate
them off. Yeah.
and burn them off all day long. But I won't have them with my major meal. And having my major meal at 2 p.m., latest 3 p.m., has created such a better restful sleep for me where I'm not having that acid reflux, which is so evil. But the thing I worry about is the rainbow diet. I worry about not enough fruits, definitely not enough vegetables. When you talk about anti-aging, how would you couch to anybody out there who can still control their own diet past a certain point for aging gracefully, but also for regenerating your body? Do you think vegetables are the key to that? Do you think fruits are the key to that? Where do you think the importance lies, and where does the American audience for aging? And, you know, there's an old saying actually from Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones who said, life's a funny thing. Nobody wants to die young, but nobody wants to grow old.
It's so true.
It
It's so
is.
true.
Yeah.
I think, you got to be honest with yourself, because if you're really honest with yourself, like for me, I can look at my schedule and I can say, okay, I'm traveling this week. I've got a lot of meetings. I know that my nutrition is going to be a little bit off. I'm a huge fan of AG1 Athletic Greens. I'm
What's
not a
that?
sponsor. I'm not a sponsor for them. I just personally order it. There's this, it's a green drink. I mix it in with my water, and I literally can get all of my greens, and
Wow.
it's so easy for me. And I've seen with my dad. My dad's 85, and
Uh-huh.
I've seen that whenever he's with me, because I always have them with me, and sometimes he'll come to my second home, and we'll be vacationing there. And whenever he's there, he's like, "Yeah, make me that green drink," and I make it for him. I see a difference in him like in 24 hours. I see his energy go up. I know that he knows that if he drinks, he's going to feel better. They started out really being about the athlete. I'm a big proponent of that, but it all goes back to just being honest with yourself. You have to find ways to get around that. If
Yeah.
that's not happening in a regular diet, what does that look like? There's some of these, it's on television all the time about the fruits and the vegetables that have kind of been micronized, and I'm not a huge proponent of them. I haven't used them. We have some patients on them here at Executive Medicine. They seem to really like that. But again, it was the conversations that we're having with them. We're saying, okay, if you literally know that historically you haven't been getting this, and if you're being honest with yourself, you're not going to be sitting down to a good salad and crunching on veggies. Let's find a workaround, because you still need the nutrients that are in there. We have our own supplement line. So if we do micronutrient testing and we see, oh gosh, you're low on copper. This is really odd. Sometimes we find these things that are kind of off. Then we can supplement with a pharmaceutical grade supplement the things that they need without just overdosing them. We have patients come to us from all over the globe, other countries, right here in the United States. And when they come in and they get this half day physical, and we're uncovering everything, we're really getting to the root of the problem. Maybe we're doing, full body CT scans. They leave with a roadmap that is very personalized to them.
I'm turning 80. I take nothing. I
That's
have
great.
cholesterol problem. I changed my diet, and within 5 months, I had no cholesterol. I had perfect cholesterol. I had high blood pressure, which was really from steroids from chemo. Once those were flushed out of my system, that was not a
You're better. Yeah.
problem. And so I walk the walk and talk the talk. I am a huge fan of being proactive in your own healthful life, trying to avoid drugs
Yep.
that you are going to have to lean on for the rest of your life, and not ever learning by taking those drugs how to sort of have a DIY thing going mentally where you take care of it yourself as much as you can. And I find that doctors are all linked to big hospital systems.
This is a big problem. It is a massive problem. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people don't understand that a lot of doctor practices, and I really wish that we could do something about this. I'm not a big government person, but this is a problem. When the doctors are employed by the hospitals and then they're beholden to the pharmaceutical companies, this is a big issue. And it's one of the reasons why we went to a model where we're not that. We don't see drug reps in our office. The typical office, they get, breakfast, lunch, and sometimes dinner out of the drug reps, and the drug reps come in and they're
Oh,
educating.
yeah.
Here you got, you put your people on this. I mean, they're doing anything to keep them hooked on these meds. And if we can get away from that, I think this really started in the 90s. We started seeing, oh, you're depressed? Let me put you on an antidepressant. They never talked about exercise. They never talked about nutrition. They never, of course, then they didn't know about the gut microbiome, but we know now, but those conversations weren't happening. Now, if we hear that somebody is having these depressive symptoms, part of our half day exam anyways is we're doing some mental health assessments on them. And if that comes back, our next step is let's map your brain. And if we can do some brain mapping and identify what's going on, and we can do like a micronutrient test and see, is this nutritionally linked? Like, what is the root
Ah,
cause of this depression? 99% of the time, we can turn it around with neurofeedback, red light therapy, nutritional supplementation where they were deficient. We're not just giving them more drugs. What some people don't know is that when you take these medications, a lot of them deplete particular nutrients out of your system.
oh,
I mean, it'll take zinc out of your system, it'll take vitamin D out of your system. It will just drain your minerals. There are some medications that should be taken. So I don't want to sound super anti medication. Diabetics need to be controlled. High blood pressure, until you can get it under control with other ways, you have to control it so they don't end up having a stroke. There is a time and a place for these drugs, but what we found, and I'm going to make a little analogy here, what we found with the pharmaceutical industry, it's kind of like the cereal aisle, right? When I was a kid and you went to the cereal aisle, you had like four options. You get like, here's your boxes. And then they start coming out with all the colorful ones. And then they put, little trinkets in the box for the kids or a game. And then it became a fun thing that they had to have this cereal because they're coming out with this inside the box. And then it was like, oh my gosh, it's a half a aisle. That's the same thing that's going on with the drug industry, is they're just adding all these drugs, just like going down the cereal aisle. It's enticing in a really bizarre way to not just physicians, but to patients and
it's
to
very
parents.
American to want to get something with no effort. So I'm going to just finish this podcast by saying, number one, I'm a huge proponent of red light. I use it every day of my life because I've got just terrible inflammation in my shoulder joints, my shoulder sockets, and again, my hip. Does it help 100%? No, but it probably helps 30%, and that's good enough for me. Then I pursue low gluten diet
Yeah,
that's supposed
that's
to
good.
be useful. But for all those cereals, there's one thing we're not talking about. The 600-pound gorilla in the room, sugar.
Sugar.
And sugar is directly linked, at least from my hospital system and my doctors, to cancer. It is a purveyor, and it blows me away that it isn't major medical headlines all the time, because the
Right.
one thing all those sugar heavy aisles that have to do with breakfast cereals have in common is you're overdosing yourself with sugar.
Yeah.
And that is linked to depression, it's linked to cancer, it's linked to diabetes, it's linked to morbid obesity. We thank you for the way you focus on you are what you eat. And I will say it as a woman about to turn 80, you are going to have to eat your age. You don't need to act your age, you don't need to talk your age, but you need to eat your age, and you need to be the boss of you and know what you're doing right, because honestly, most of these drugs like Ozempic, they don't teach you to eat correctly. So Judy Gaman, we will list all the information at the end of this podcast so people can get in touch with you and your organization, Executive Medicine, which is right up my alley. And thank you so much. Fascinating podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us. And
Always a
audience,
pleasure.
I wish for all of you that you for really remain too young to be old. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Too Young to Be Old podcast. The episode may be over, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Diane Gilman, or visit our website, thedianegilman.com. If you like the show, leave us a rating or a review and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And until then, don't forget, age is just a number. Together, we'll prove that we are all too young to be old.